Welcome to the Startup Grind.
It's great to be here. So I gave this talk at Trailblazers, and they're like, come do the same talk. So if you were there, I'm going to go through the same stuff, but I'm going to run through a lot of images about some things that I see that I think you see very well. And talk about some trends in the areas of what I call network effects around talent inclusion and people who haven't been included in the past, and then a little bit about moonshots, and I promise at the end I'll talk a little bit about GoogleX because people often want to know. But the main place that I want to start is with kind of this image. We all know this because we feel it and we're working with this, but this is an image that one of the engineers at Google hooked up to all of our data centers and was just capturing search. So each of the little dots represents chunks of searching that's happening. And it just, to me, I like to look at it and think how astonishing it is about how networked we are as a people, as a world. And you see the colors are languages, so red for English, and a lighter yellow-green for Spanish, and then some Portuguese and a darker green. I don't know if the lights are a little bright, but you may not see there's a little bit of French out in the islands, and English there's Hawaii. So just really how connected people are. And the impact of that is really astonishing in so many ways. We all feel it. And one of my favorite ones that's really personal is the reason why I ended up going into technology and engineering was largely because of science and math teachers in our high school in Buffalo, New York, who made us do science fair. And it made us actually feel what science and technology were versus reading in a book. And one of the things that's fabulous is to watch the Google Science Fair kids now. And this is some photographs of the 15 top winners from countries all over the world. It is astonishing to see what they're able to do. They're like orders of magnitude ahead of anything we were able to do. There was the odd kid, who did something amazing in science fair before the internet. But with the internet, what these kids are able to do is so great. Because they can know what the state of the art of their ideas are, and they can advance the field as teenagers, and they can connect to professionals and do lab work that's just amazing. And so to me, they represent some of the best of what the internet is bringing. And this one to me, this is, I was able to go, you're going to hear from Mary Grove later. Mary and I and some others were able to go to Afghanistan on a trip for Google, and we were in in Western Afghanistan in Herat. So this is a startup incubator there. They're about 80 miles from the Iran border. And when I think about the network, I think about the computer scientists, because I think they're the most networked people in the world. If you think about how people collaborate in open source and how the 16 to 18 million programmers in the world are just so wired, and thinking about these people and how real change is going to come to all these countries where people have not had opportunity. These guys were founding 6 new startups. Someone brought a bunch of Frisbees to bring Silicon Valley culture to their thinking, and they were all in. But the network is all over. This is a march against the FARC in Colombia. It actually happened twice. One Facebook group, 450,000 people, generated 12 million people protesting against the terrorist group in their country. The adjacency of what people know is illustrated in this image, which is, used to be if you surfed around on Google Maps or any kind of maps, you would see in most parts of the world in emerging countries, like this is Lahore, Pakistan, a line or one highway. But there are millions of people there. And so the metadata was not available, in fact, not available for about 70% of the world. But this is using a tool like a Wikipedia-like tool, it's called MapMaker, where the people just drew themselves onto the map on the satellite imagery. And so all of a sudden you can reveal your city. Geo information is so important for ambulances, for schools, for urban planning, for delivery, for commerce. And so having people do this work is amazing. And this is the kind of activity that's going on that tool. So thinking not only about the beginnings of Wikipedia, but how we collaborate together and the adjacency of not only people to act and data to act, but what people know and being able to cross-share that in cool ways. This is an old screenshot. People know Khan Academy? Yes, probably yes, lots of people. Sal Khan, really, we just heard about education. I love those watershed moments where you're waiting for the amazing entrepreneurs to show up and show you how some daunting problem's going to change. And Khan Academy for me was like, it's like in chemistry, the activation energy, and then it gets easier. He just started teaching. And this is an old one, but the density of the number of classes he was just teaching. And it doesn't mean that Sal Khan's probably the best person to teach all these classes and every topic, but it does mean that someone started and they showed us a new way. And they said, maybe education could be free for everyone. And maybe we just get moving and stop talking about it. And I love him for that. I think that in some ways this slide also represents the opportunity as we put our knowledge and we collaborate together that all world knowledge will be available online for nearly free or accessible in some form to everyone. This is also about us as people. These are computer science teachers. We have a program called CS for High School, and we flash mob these amazing teachers together. I'm thinking about the greatest master teachers, if you imagine, like from your own experience, the best teachers. What if they could have collaborated and shared the best of what they were doing and how we can change education that way? This is from Daphne Kohler's talk about Coursera and changing the way that flipped classrooms allow people and putting some data scientists underneath watching children. And we just heard a bunch about that. But the classic bell-shaped curve says, in a class, half the kids will learn, half they won't. Oh, well. That's kind of a crazy way to be, especially for elementary school where we're learning like addition and subtraction and reading and basic sciences. What's so cool is that as we get to this mastery learning, we're going to get to a point where only a few kids in the class aren't understanding. A teacher can intervene for them. It's impossible to intervene for half a classroom. How many people have ever done First Robotics, been to First Robotics? Yes, so this is First Robotics Nationals in St. Louis. My hope for the future of education is this kind of a collaborative experience where we're building and stuff and we're learning as we do it, more like a Da Vinci style. This might as well be football Friday night lights, and they're doing math and science. And so thinking about how the future of education, using the network, and using ourselves and our talent and our passion to network ourselves. This is from a third grade class where our kids go to school, and I think what's interesting is this quote, "In effort there's joy." There's so much focus in education reform around the core content that the kid needs to have, which I think is true. And yet at the same time, most of the kids born today, many of them are going to live for 100 years. There's probably no set of knowledge that we know they need to know. They need to learn how to learn. They need to learn how to work with each other. They need to learn how to collaborate and have fun and love things, and that in effort, there's joy. And so I hope that as we do education reform, we use the net to make that true. This last image around education is a really cool one from the One Laptop Per Child projects. This is an experiment where they're taking some Android tablets with all that great, rich set of apps that people are using with their kids. Hand your kid your phone and they're using the education app. These kids are part of the 50 to 60 million children who have no teacher. There's no one near these villages who knows how to read. So they chose these villages and they just handed the laptops. They taught one adult how to charge them with solar. So the energy wasn't going to be a limiting factor. And they just left them there. And so the two adults in the back, this is Dr. Marion Wolf from Tufts, who's a literacy expert. The two guys here come every 2 weeks in SneakerNet, switch the SIM cards. And what's amazing is within the first week, the kids use 50 apps. And they just start learning. And the question on the table is, for the kids who we haven't figured out how to have the will to get them to school or teacher, could they just teach themselves, onboard themselves, figure out how to get the net to them, and then we can all start collaborating. I always put them together with these kids because these are some kids who won the first Google Science Fair, and the two guys here are from Swaziland. So maybe someday these kids will be these kids if we start doing some things like this quickly. Other things that become adjacent are data. So if you think about climate change, this is some images from Google Earth where you're looking at the 70s, I think it's 80s, 2001, where the logging roads have come in. And using the kinds of tools that we have to analyze satellite imagery and algorithms to really look at data sets of our whole planet. The Google Earth team has uploaded terabytes of data from the satellite images that have watched satellites have watched the planet since the 80s. So can we take those data sets now and make them adjacent? This is another favorite data adjacency thing, which is, I never thought about this. I got to work on the beginning of Google Books when engineers started scanning, and we had to call the libraries and publishers and said, hey, we got this crazy idea. I never thought about this, but if you think about it now that we scan the books and they're searchable, all the words that were ever written are adjacent, kind of in one corpus. And so people are starting doing searching across trends in humanity. And so this was a New York Times article. They had taken the word women, and they were able to show that from 1800 to 2008, the use of the word women was nominal until the modern women's rights movement. So you could look and see, reflect our humanity back at ourselves, and when do trends show up, and use the adjacency of data to better understand ourselves. We're about to do something later this week called SolveForX, which is an event we run where we collect amazing moonshot proposals using technology to help solve problems in the world around energy and water and biology, medicine, other things. People come propose, talk about a huge problem, some crazy technology, think that just might solve the problem and what their radical way to ramp it is. We've launched a site, and so this is a project around collaborating to try to help moonshot pioneers help each other, those of us who want to help spread the word about their ideas and get us out of some of the problems that we're in, leveraging great entrepreneurial ideas. Okay, so I talked about where the network is and my incredible enthusiasm for how we as a humanity are starting to collaborate and use our imagination and the adjacency of things, but there's some places where the network's not. And this is an incredible flip side of that spinning globe. There's parts of the world where just for whatever reason the plumbing layers are not there yet, and it's really a crime. This is, you can see that this is not a time of day problem that most of Africa is not lit up with the internet, because Europe is alive and well. And you can see that where cables touch down, there's points. But what was interesting to me was that finding this image on the web, as of 2005, the lightweight lines here mean plan. So there wasn't even an undersea cable on the right-hand side of this entire continent. And on this side, there's a cable that kind of ignores all the countries, a cable that stops a few places, and I think, why don't we have more computer scientists mixed in with the world bankers so we can get this stuff done? And there's no reason why 900 million talented people shouldn't be in the global conversation, and we need to get that done. What's exciting is that it looks like this now. There are cables landing in different countries, and I personally think one of the greatest changes we're going to see in the next decade is as 900 million talented people from Africa join us and from some other emerging places, and how that talent starts to interweave with us and how they change their world and our world with those skills. Examples, here's iHub Nairobi. I don't know, are people here from iHub? Yes, no? I think there's a couple people here from a couple of the startup areas. And David Senge, who's a Media Lab PhD student, wrote a great blog, Aid to Africa Becomes Made in Africa. There's Fab Labs. This is Alani, who started at a stock exchange, commodities exchange, like the Chicago exchanges in Ethiopia for coffee and all of these great goods. You also see a change in the nonprofits. So instead of this top-down aid, let us do dead aid, let us do things at you, there's much more respect for local entrepreneurs. And the money is trying to find, just like here in Silicon Valley, find the best ideas and fund them, scale them. That's what's starting to change in the nonprofit world. It's slower, but it's changing and exciting. Just for kind of perspective, this is how connected we are. Where the red and green are sort of highly connected, a little yellow, see wireless in blue. So the different regions of the world and the work we have to do. Some of my colleagues at GoogleX started Project Loon to get the very edge. They're launching balloons. There's some videos up about it, but the idea is to get up above the planes and look downwards. The balloons talk to each other and they talk down to the local providers, doing 3G, working on LTE, and sort of doing some experiments over New Zealand now. Okay, so I want to switch gears to also a network point. Networks of old were also just as important as our networks are today. If you think about the Silk Road and how much it changed things, just changed commerce. I don't know, do people know the Erie Canal? I'm from Buffalo, so I can give a shout out to it. But it dropped the grain price by a factor of 10 in getting goods out of the middle of the country in the 1800s, out into ports and selling goods into the country. Critical for the development of the United States. But at the same time, both of these networks were critical for social development and change. One of the things that's interesting is that along the Erie Canal, it's one of the places where some of the greatest leaders and the most conversations were happening around abolition and around women's rights. And in fact, the first women's rights convention in all history is at Seneca Falls, which is right on the canal. Elizabeth Cady Stanton gathered the first group there. And I guess one of the thoughts I have is we in tech, we don't have as many women and minorities as we should. To make great products, we need more people. And I feel like we're making tremendous progress as a world in all the sectors of upping the global conversation and how we're going to include more talent. Sheryl Sandberg's book, The Makers videos, and some of the historic things that we're bringing back. I work very closely with Malala Yousafzai, who was attacked by the Taliban and is now working for girls' education and girls' rights and girls' voices. So we're seeing the groundswell. But I think still in tech we're behind. And I wanted to share these images with you guys. How many people recognize anyone here? One person, two, three, a couple. So one of the things I think is really interesting is that I think technical women are largely invisible, and especially historically. Most people don't know, it's either Google up here, that Ada Lovelace is the original first person in all history, of men and women, to suggest the idea of programmability, considered the first world's programmer. So Grace Hopper invented the idea of subroutines, coined the word debugging, and many other firsts. A lot of people don't know that there were two groups of Apollo astronauts, the men that were front and center, and the women who they didn't even make spacesuits to fit. Some amazing history there. This is a great article that Wired did telling us about their existence. You know, astronauts are some of the most celebrated people in the world, and the women were just not even talked about. This is the ENIAC. Do you guys know the ENIAC? It's the first digital computer in America. The first programmers of this computer, the first programmers in the United States, were 6 women that you've never heard of. They wrote the first sort routine and some of the first groundings of computer science. This is Katherine Johnson. She's an African-American woman. She calculated the trajectories of Alan Shepard's flight, John Glenn's flight, and the Apollo mission to the moon. Never heard of her. Hedy Lamarr, fundamental inventions in wireless. And of course, the Bletchley Park, Rosie the Riveter people. I don't know if you know Bletchley, it's the code crackers who helped shorten World War II by 2 years, saving estimated 11 million lives. And 10,000 people, more than half women. So math solves problems. Sadly, in media today, none of the jobs that I hold or other technical women exist for children's television. And it's 3 to 1 in children's television of men and women. 80% of the jobs are held by male characters. So just pointing out some stuff we got to work on. At Google, what we're doing is we're working on trying to help big media. We're also trying to make more of our technical women visible. So my call to action for you guys is get the technical women that you know and get them to start talking, get them to be visible. If we are 16 million programmers in the world, that means there's at least 2 or 3 million women. Where are they? Can we get them on stage so that everyone can see them and more people will come? And then as a company, we're doing bias training on ourselves. This is an example of ambient bias, where what you have physically around you makes you know whether you belong or not. One of the other trainings that I think is interesting is if there's 10 characteristics for a job, on average, men will apply if they have 3, and women will apply if they have 7. So that means if you're a manager, you need to know that, because a group will raise their hand and a group won't. You need to look at everybody and pay attention to that stuff. I promised I'd talk about Google X, so I'll do that really quick before we end. We have a lot to live up to at Google X. We're kind of Google's hardware wing, but sometimes people call us this wildest dreams place. But we're really skunkworks-like. You know, this is what it looks like there. Lots of hardware. So everybody's desk, lots of optics and mechanical engineers, robotics, and chemists and other folks. Our mission is to try to launch and invent moonshot technology that can make the world radically better. Things like the self-driving car. You know, this is some images of some videos that are up. Google Glass is in this team, and some of the shots from that are taking photographs. You guys have seen Glass by now, probably, if you haven't come see me. Alerts, lots of partners starting. And then Project Loon I mentioned. There's also an amazing team that's working on kite windmills. If you think about a windmill, one of the things that's true is that wind is stronger higher. So could we go higher? Could we be more efficient, get up higher? And so taking the stand away on the windmill and sending the pinwheel up higher and sending the power down is what this team's working on. And I mentioned SolveForX. Culturally, our goal is to be a little more like Willy Wonka. You know, this is kind of a fun place to be. We call it Peter and Petra Pan with PhD. Find these rock star people, get behind them, and help them make this idea happen. We try to think of projects that are 10x, not 10%. It's funny how sometimes it's almost the same effort to push yourself that much further and then versus, you know, editing what's there. So, and you really have to start over. And we use the expression out of improv, 2/3 yes and. Spend more of your time trying to build the idea, help your colleague get it done. 1/3 yes but. Of course, we need to critique, but don't spend all your time there. And a lot of that classic design thinking. So we have a rapid eval team. that's doing lots of prototyping, really building stuff, and then small team skunkworks working on stuff, get to projects, and then start to build the business ideas. And in general, X for us means what are you passionate about solving in the world? So my question for you guys is, what's your X, and how can I help you? So thank you very much. And sort of like crazy whirlwind slide.
Awesome. Yeah. So I've been asking some women here about what they think is the biggest challenge that has been solved by technology or has yet to be solved by technology. Maybe you can do two challenges, one that has been solved and one that hasn't been solved.
You said women, so do you mean on behalf of women, or you're asking women the question?
I guess I'm asking you as a woman what you feel has been a challenge that has been helped you as a woman, a technical woman, or just as a woman, what technology has helped solve a challenge for you, and then also what is another challenge that we still need to have solved, but maybe a technology that hasn't been invented yet.
Sure. The things that I think a lot, personally, I'm really passionate about both innovation and inventions themselves that are very applied, that'll help get us out of messes, help save lives, help with energy, help with water and that. And then what I call access to innovation, which is how do we get more people to be able to do the kinds of things we get to do, feel empowered and invent and collaborate with our teams, whether they want to be on tech teams or whether they want to write a book or whatever it is, but be part of bringing their passion to making the kind of change they want to bring to the world. So those are things I'm interested in. I think that, to me, the internet is the biggest part of causing us in all the different flavors of the platforms that are out there to appreciate each other. Certainly there are negative stuff. There's so much bullying and nastiness and misogyny and just horrific stuff also on the web that reflects back the humanity of what's happening physically, but is sometimes unseen, and we see it in comments and nastiness. But the most of the web is an amazing place. And so I think that there's an opportunity to leverage that, to give ourselves more of a break as people, to be our whole selves, to let men not have to be this crazy 1950s role from Mad Men that they have to be, and women not to be this crazy thing, and just really sort of open up the potential of humanity. And I also think work on our empathy and those kinds of things. So I think that's exciting. And as part of that, I was lucky to go to the King Center dinner, Martin Luther King in Atlanta, and two women were getting the Coretta Scott King Angel Award. Eve Ensler for 1 Billion Rising. 1 billion women will be beaten or raped. It's 1 out of 3. And so she's really got this program to try to raise awareness of how are we as humanity going to stop doing this. And so for 1 Billion Rising in that effort, which is a Valentine's Day thing, so I hope their idea is dance and raise awareness. And then Khalida Brohi, who I'm a mentor to, which is why I was there, who's working with rural women in Pakistan on Etsy-like ideas to bring empowerment to stop honor killing in that area. So through empowerment and awareness and celebrating tribal culture and engaging the communities through embroidery and other things, she's working on then creating commerce opportunities and awareness about the actual laws about murder versus some kind of an odd idea about culture. So, that's kind of a long answer, but I think that in general, I think these technologies are empowering men and women and people all over the world in ways that are really profound. And that's what I'm really interested in keep working on. And really think in that activation energy I mentioned about Khan. It isn't that I need to do anything. I need to be kind of open for business to help amazing ideas that show up. And we all need to help each other. When someone has some key insight and it's in them to do it. I got to do so many acquisitions for Google. I feel like founders, it's in their DNA. When you find someone who has it, help them do it. Other questions?
Hi, thank you for speaking today. How hard do you think it is to, I've pretty much got blocked several times, but on my particular project, but is it harder for women to get funding in startups and ventures than it is for men?
Definitely, yes.
And why is that?
It's just unconscious bias. I think it isn't anyone's fault. It's our we live with the weight of history. There's been a lot of bias and a lot of discrimination, a lot of stuff against people of different races. And when that Elizabeth Cady Stanton thing, one of the things she's writing is basically, can I stop being property? Can I, that's only 1850s, it's not that long ago that women were considered properties, and certainly in certain countries they still are. We don't have that in the United States now, but we still have, the President of the State of the Union is like, it's a national embarrassment that women are being paid 30% less. I can't remember his exact stat or what the current is, but, my mom used to have this button, it said 69 cents or something, 79 cents, in the 70s and 80s, and it's still true. So, NIH funding, women don't have so much funding. So nobody gets their rights without taking their rights and without some teammates to collaborate. So we have to push as women, and men have to help us. And a big part of that is that most of what's going on, I think, and we know, is not conscious. It's not like anybody's intending to do this. We just have things like, if the Gina Davis stuff is true, which she measured, when we watch television, out of 4 characters, only one's a woman. Then when we come to a tech conference, out of 4 characters, if only one's a woman, it just seems normal to us. So we just have to get ourselves out of this stuff, right? If you go to a kindergartner today who's watched American children's television and say, draw a scientist, they'll draw a cartoon of an Einstein-like white man. That's what they've seen, right? It was really fun in the ENIAC story. A friend of mine is the one who found 4 of the 6 programmers, our first American programmers, these 4 women, and interviewed them, and she's working on film. And interestingly, her son met them, and one time he asked her, could boys be programmers? It's all what you learn. And so I think, we've been doing a lot of research in computer science and bias, and Harvey Mudd has such great breakthroughs right now. I don't know if you guys know, but Harvey Mudd did these surveys on these high school girls, and they found out what was blocking them, and they're at 50-50 in computer science and their major, and their major's more popular. So they changed their whole major based on what the kids said about what they needed to bother to come into this field. So part of it is, Marie Clawey, the president of Harvard, says it's just hard work. You have to dig into the data, and you have to evolve yourself. And so that's what we have to do as an industry. Now, what I'm excited about is there's a lot of work going on, and there's some bright spots, some activation energy where there's some talent that we can follow. But it's very important. And if we want to have the best products, we really need to have all the voices in there.
Thank you.
Thanks for your question. Okay.
Thank you. It's quite inspiring to see all the projects you are actually working in. And I'd just like to know in detail, how does the decision-making process go when you receive an idea and you decide this is feasible, so let's do it? Because we have crazy projects, so how do you actually decide on what to take on?
Yeah, it's not crazy enough. There used to be some guy from Nintendo, I guess his job was saying, not fun enough, so maybe not crazy enough. So I think that the way that we are approaching it, and I lead some parts of X, but different leaders, we at Google are a little more consumer-centric, so the projects tend to be more consumer and platform than not deep enterprise projects, so that maybe that's a little bit of a filter. But it's really about prototyping, like playing with ideas, and even early on, having a crazy idea and see almost like trying to prove it's not possible. That happened with Project Loon. Rich Duvall, who was working on that in the Rapid Eval team. Larry and Sergey had talked about balloon ideas, and that's been around in the world, just in general, this idea of balloons and resources, transport, and was playing around with those ideas, and he just kept trying to see, like, could this happen? Well, let me see if it can't. And it just kept kind of working. And so once we get to a point where we feel like it could graduate, it just might work, then it turns into a project that's being explored and a little bit more of a team comes together. But very much, one of the things that's really important, since we're doing much more hardware, is physical shops, that kind of fab lab maker kind of spaces. Being able to make what you're talking about, and even early on, being able to prototype. One of my favorite things, I did not work on the glass team, but Tom Chi, who was in the design group, often talks, and he asks people, how long do you think it was before they had the first glass prototype? Any guesses? 6 months? 2 years?
3 days.
3 days?
A week.
Sir? A week? 1.5 hours. So that's a method, right? There's a methodology. There's very IDEO. It's very D-School, Woody Flowers, like that. So it very much can you prove it? Can you make it? Can you see it? Can we talk about it on the ideas versus, a lot of people start with more, slideware and spreadsheets and that, which, yes, and let's use that. But start with the guts of what you're trying to do and get some customers and yourselves in the mix of it early on. That's proven to be really helpful for us.
Okay, thank you so much. Can we all